All right, Lions fans, this is the Overthinker, and we are ready to talk about the 2025 season. And I just wanted to retrospectively look back at this season, how things went wrong, where things could have been better, and some bright things that came out of the season, but also talk about some of the bad things, and what needs to change going forward, in my opinion, the things that need to get better. And for me, the most obvious thing has to be the offensive line. Shortly before the draft, the retirement of Frank Ragnow definitely was something that the Lions seemed not to be prepared for, even though at the end of the 2024 season, it was fairly obvious that Frank Ragnow was playing through some serious injuries. He had a bad neck injury, groin injury, and other things he was playing through that potentially could have ended his career. We all knew that it was going to be a long road for him to come back and be the same guy. So going into the draft without a presumptive starter at center, they wound up taking Tate Ratledge, who we all kind of thought was going to probably play center right after the draft, but then winds out being the case that he's going to play guard. So they move Graham Glasgow to center, and this was just a huge mistake. And unfortunately, the Lions had no real options at left guard that were great. Guys kept getting hurt. Mahogany wasn't amazing when he was starting out there. And then they threw in Awasika, I think his name is. He wasn't really great either. He wound up getting hurt as well. So it really was just a case of everyone that goes in at left guard was either hurt or not good. And then Graham Glasgow at center was not really good either. He made a lot of mistakes just not picking up guys on stunts and not really calling out protections correctly many times. Graham Glasgow on run plays just didn't block anybody or went the wrong way, things like that. And yeah, that is expected for somebody that mostly has played guard in his career and is a much better guard than center. But it just makes no sense to me that the Lions thought he was going to be a good center this year. Ratledge at right guard was pretty solid. I felt like, especially as the season went on, he played a lot better. But I really felt like Graham Glasgow at center was a huge problem. And also in pass protection, pretty much if he gets one-on-one with someone who's like a good pass rusher, it was a problem. So yeah, throughout the season, I really felt like the Lions could not run the ball up the middle for the most part, outside of a couple of games. And a lot of times it was interior pressure getting at Jared Goff, which is really where you make him look like an average quarterback. If you can get pressure up in the face of Jared Goff, he's not going to look good because he cannot move like a lot of other quarterbacks in the NFL. He is not somebody who can throw while running, and you have to keep him in the pocket. He can step up. He can, step to the side to avoid pressure. But if there's pressure coming at him, he's not fleet of foot enough to really get away from that stuff like a lot of the other starters in the NFL. He is definitely one of the least mobile quarterbacks in the NFL, and that is the downside when you bring in a quarterback like that. But Jared Goff has been an amazing quarterback for the Lions. I do not see them even addressing the option of moving on. I feel like that would be absolutely insane. There's no other good option better than Jared Goff right now. There's no way to really upgrade at a position like quarterback. If you have a guy like Jared Goff, I feel like you have to roll with it and you have to support him. You really have to rebuild that offensive line. And yeah, unfortunately, the Lions just lost a lot of close games this year, especially versus good teams. There were a lot of games like the Eagles game and the Rams game, the second Packers game, a lot of games that we were close. Okay, we were playing against playoff teams, and we just could not get it done. When the Ravens were healthy, we beat them, and that was an incredible game. Jared Goff made some of his best plays of his career. He made some plays in that game while moving, throwing the ball under pressure, guys in his face, third and long a couple times by the goal line, by our own goal line, almost in safety range, getting it to Laporta under pressure. Just some insane plays that Jared Goff made in that game, plus the big run by David Montgomery. That game was kind of the only game when you really felt like everything was clicking. Also had some crazy plays in that game from the defense. You had Jack Campbell on fourth down, was able to get a scrambling Lamar Jackson and keep him from converting there on the goal line. That was a huge play as well. And also Jack Campbell this year looks like a real all-pro level linebacker. One of the best in the game, and definitely somebody who's going to demand a huge contract, which is something we'll have to talk about going forward. We're going to make like an off-season video, and we'll talk about a few things. I want to talk about Taylor Decker. Also want to talk about the Kirby Joseph injury situation, and a couple other things. offensive coordinator Drew Petzing. But going through the season, you really felt like the Lions could not run the ball up the middle when they wanted to a lot of times, and that caused the play action to not be as successful and caused us to get into some more third and longs where defenses were really able to get after Jared Goff, especially in the interior pressure. And also on the edge, I really felt like Taylor Decker was not the same guy this year, and it does look like he's potentially looking at retiring. We'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, I do feel like going into this offseason, the Lions definitely have to address multiple positions on the O-line. And then on defense, it was tough where we have so many cornerbacks going down. I think at some point we were on our fifth-string cornerbacks, and Amik Robinson, who's actually our second slot corner, was out there playing corner for most of the year on the outside, playing valiantly, doing his best, but really he's just not fast enough to probably play that position full time. I feel like as a fill-in starter, he was really good, but there definitely were times when teams got him on a crossing route, and a receiver starts running away from him. He's just not able to close that distance. He doesn't have the speed that you want at that position. And yeah, I do think going into 2026, cornerback is a position they're going to want to address as well. Terrion Arnold is a guy who has shown some flashes and definitely shown some plays where he's just not quick enough to get there, not seeing it fast enough, and just not really looking like a starting caliber corner a lot of times as well. I would really look at the Bengals game as probably his best game of his young career so far. But we are going into year 3 now, and he still does not look like a good starter. And that's all I always say. He's had, I think, the Bengals game, which he got hurt, that's probably the best game of his career. He had some really nice reps versus Jamar Chase. Didn't really have any of those plays where he looked terribly out of place, But yeah, I'm not going to just take that one solid performance and try to project that over the rest of his career. He has mostly shown that he is not really a guy you want on one-on-one coverage with good receivers. It's going to be a problem with Terrion Arnold. He grabs a lot, and he's going to get flagged for that, and he just doesn't look like he's really fast enough. And that is pretty unfortunate. That's one of the things that I was really hoping this season Terrion Arnold would show that he is one of those guys going forward, and I just don't really get that feeling from watching the games this year. I don't really get the feeling that Terrion Arnold is going to be on this team much longer unless he gets a lot better next season. And it might even be in the cards for him to potentially play safety next year, as we are having some injuries right now. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph potentially not going to be able to go when the season starts. Maybe Terrion Arnold can play one of those positions. And yeah, that's just something that teams often try when they find that a corner is not quite fast enough, but they're actually maybe a good tackler and kind of have a good mind for the game. Maybe they can play safety and have another chance at, making a career out of it. So potentially we might see Terrion Arnold taking some snaps at safety in 2026. And overall, I really felt like the Lions defense, especially in the second half of the season when guys just kept going down in the secondary, it was really tough to watch. I mean, they really did play hard, and they did their best. You go watch that Buccaneers game, and that was just insane what they did out there with, I feel like they only had 4 starters in that game or something. So for them to be able to confuse Baker Mayfield and really come away with a game plan that's going to stop that Buccaneers offense was really impressive to see. But then, we had plenty of games where they got toasted, especially the Rams game and the Packers game. So it definitely wasn't quite good enough, but that's what you get when you're on your 5th string cornerback. You just don't have guys that can hold up, and it definitely makes it quite a bit harder when you're not really getting enough pass rush outside of Aiden Hutchinson. You really felt like there was not much coming from the interior or the other edge side, and the Lions don't really have anyone on the roster that you're hoping next year will be better, except maybe Elaine McNeil. Didn't have the greatest season coming back from that injury. We'll just have to see if 2026 is any different. He had a pretty good game. I think it was versus the Ravens was his best game of the year. But other than that, it wasn't really the Elaine McNeil that we saw in 2024. It was a much different guy out there in 2025. Was not as stout versus the run. It really was a non-factor on passing downs. So yeah, I really think that just overview there really explains what went wrong with the Lions. The interior of the offensive line was really not close to good enough. It was some of the worst interior offensive line play I have seen since I've started watching football, especially for our Lions. It was really bad. I mean, week 1 was horrible, like versus the Packers. That was insane. I mean, it got better, but it still was not that good. Throughout the season, you really felt like the Lions could not run the ball very much. Jahmyr Gibbs made a lot of plays, but a lot of that was like making a guy miss and then getting through the hole, So there were a lot of just like unblocked guys coming up the middle on pass downs, not able to pick up stunts, and as well on run plays, just not being able to get a hat on a hat, having guys go completely unblocked, and overall still a fairly explosive offense. I feel like we still got a lot of big plays from Jameson as well as Amon-Ra St. Brown having some insane run after catch this year, and just putting the team on his back a lot of times. So yeah, that really was it for the offense. And then on defense, Aiden Hutchinson had that season you were really hoping for, coming back off of that catastrophic leg injury. He looked just like the guy he was before he broke his leg, and he does look like he's going to be a kind of perennial defensive player of the year contender. It's really tough when Myles Garrett is playing football, but Aiden Hutchinson is definitely one of the top few defensive ends in the NFL, and he showed that this year. He showed some improvement, actually, especially with his hand placement, just kind of knocking away offensive linemen's hands. That is something that is so important for defensive linemen, especially on the edge. When you can knock the guy's hands down and get under his pads, that is just unbelievably important, and it helps you get to the quarterback a lot faster. So yeah, I guess overall bright spots for this team. You really felt like Amik Robertson is going to be a guy you want to keep around, whether he's going to play slot or be kind of a backup corner. He's definitely had a better season than I expected. I really feel like Jack Campbell had the best year of his career, a really complete season, just consistently being a dominant force in the run game and also making plays in pass coverage, which we had not really seen a lot of before this season. This was definitely his best season playing in coverage. He made a lot of plays on the ball. I definitely feel like he was a deserving recipient of an All-Pro this season. And looks like he's going to be one of the better linebackers in the NFL, hopefully for a long time, and hopefully for the Lions. And then, of course, we have Aiden Hutchinson there on the defense. But other than that, there weren't really a lot of surprise bright spots this season for this team. There wasn't really another player that you can say kind of outperformed expectations. You could say maybe Tate Ratledge. I just feel like he looked like a good right guard. We'll see what happens next year. But yeah, other than that, maybe you have a little bit of development from Jameson Williams we saw this year. I feel like a few more tough catches over the middle he made this season, and definitely was a better route runner than years past. So maybe is a bit more of a complete receiver, and that is something that can help us going forward, of course. But other than that, just a few bright spots, honestly, roster-wise. There wasn't a lot other to glean from this season as a Lions fan going forward. I really feel like there are a lot more problems that came out of this season with the injuries to safety. I mean, you have to look at Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph as well. Brian Branch tearing his Achilles there. We don't really know when he's going to be back. An Achilles injury is something that could be 10 months, it could be 14 months, it could be 18 months. It's really just kind of all over the place, and it really depends on the player. Now, I kind of get a feeling that shorter guys tend to have a shorter recovery, and I don't really know if there's any science to that, but my thought was maybe the guys who are taller just have longer strides, so they're probably putting a lot more pressure on their Achilles when they really open up and sprint. And Brian Branch is definitely more of a short strider and doesn't have that top elite speed. He's more of a quick guy than a fast guy. So maybe that could actually help him coming back sooner. Like when Cam Akers tore his Achilles a few years ago. And maybe there really is nothing to that, but I'm just hopeful that maybe he'll be there for the start of the season. But I think it's more likely probably kind of after the bye week, if we have a week 7 bye week or something. Probably after that is maybe when you might see Brian Branch, but probably not the start of the season. And then Kirby Joseph is a whole nother discussion. We're going to have to talk about that in a different video, but basically it does look like his knee situation is going to be probably a case of a lot of load management and just hoping he can get back to the same guy he was in 2024. In 2025, he had I don't remember what game it was, but he got hurt, and after that game, he was just not the same player. And after reading a little bit of things online, there were some teams kind of concerned about his knee going into the draft. When he got drafted, he kind of fell in the draft because of that. And now it is that same knee kind of acting up, it would appear. So we're going to definitely have to look into that stuff. And it does appear that Kerby Joseph might just never be the same guy, or it might take a bit of recovery time to actually get back there and be that same guy he was in 2024 when he really was an elite free safety. So yeah, overall, pretty disappointing season for the Lions and a lot of bad things. But also on top of that, you have the division. Right now, every other team in this division looks like they're getting better. Obviously, the Bears, they were very close to making it to the Super Bowl. Caleb Williams looks insane. He made one of the craziest plays we've seen in a playoff. And he made plays like that all year. Like he, especially in fourth quarters, he was making some incredible throws. And also Ben Johnson has shown the ability to unlock that offense with all the different playmakers, you know. So obviously the Bears going forward look like they're going to be a serious contender. The Packers this year were very good. I do feel like Jordan Love had his most complete season. He's had other times when he looked like a really good quarterback towards the end of 2024. And also a couple of games in 23, he looked really good. But I feel like 2025, he kind of was a consistently good quarterback. For most of the year, you really felt like he was playing at a high level. So yeah, I really feel like the Packers, you can realistically expect to be competitive and be in the playoff race for at least the next few years. They still have a young team. They're going to have to make some roster decisions this year, but I still feel like they're going to be a good team next year. And then you have the Vikings, who are one of the best defenses in the NFL, no doubt about it. Brian Flores coming back is insanely impressive for them to get him back. What they have been able to do on the defensive side of the ball has been nothing short of impressive. And if they are able to find a quarterback somehow to come in and play at an okay level, I really feel like the Vikings are a playoff team. And yeah, there's also a slight chance that they bring in some competition at quarterback and J.J. McCarthy kind of gets better in the offseason. That's always possible, but it does feel like a lot of Vikings fans right now at this point are kind of betting against that. We'll just have to see. McCarthy's not really played a lot of football, but he's not looked amazing when he's out there most of the time. I really felt like they're probably not going to hand him the starting job next year. They're definitely going to have to bring in some kind of competition. And yeah, I am expecting the Vikings to make a move at quarterback this offseason. That will definitely make them a better team overall next year. If McCarthy gets better and he wins that job, great. But if he doesn't, they're going to have a fallback option that's going to be much better than what we saw this year. McCarthy was probably the worst quarterback in the NFL in 2025 by a good margin. And, yeah, I just don't really expect that next year. I think the Vikings will be a team that's probably in the playoffs or very close to in the playoffs. And that kind of leads us into offseason thoughts for the Detroit Lions. Hopefully they will be aggressive this offseason, going for some starters at key positions of need. Obviously some ones we discussed, but we're going to go a little more deep into that and look at some potential guys they can maybe bring in. And yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff in that video. Thanks for watching this video. We will catch you in the next one.